Well, our city's in financial crisis, and it's just a thought. I did not plan on saying this, but certainly as private individuals, if you want to organize, exercise your right of freedom of association for a common cause, and raise money to hire your own expert to be able to represent your questions and your interest, separate and distinct from even the city, we welcome that too, because we need all the help we can get.
We pay for a lot of experts in Columbus.
I have an expert that would be willing to speak with you if you'd like the number. I can give it to you.
Or support our group.
Yes, we're getting swamped with articles, and
well, the EPA
which is
last
greatly
week
appreciated.
came out with the first time saying the hydraulic fracking fluid has poisoned water in Wyoming. That they just made that first
yes, the fracking.
But that's what they're going to inject that fracking fluid into these wells.
Well, that's what we're trying to find out. And like for example, when we have some correlation between earthquakes and the locations of injection wells, somehow I can say objectively, somehow I can't see the connection between the two, but some expert can tell us there is.
They have shut them down.
The article I gave you on the New York Times today about seismologists in Ohio noticing patterns.
Yes, and I've studied that, but all they have are the patterns. They don't have the actual
data.
They have the correlation statistically,
right,
but they don't have the explanation yet.
And like I say, our contention, or I think many of our contentions too, is if you look, there's a pattern from the ODNR of subversion, just like the application. They're only required, the state only requires them to put the announcement in a local newspaper one day in the legal section.
Right, it's in a little class.
And then 15 days of discord. Well, of course they don't have a discussion about it because people don't know what's happening. I resent that. And then they say whatever they want. But this water is not being tested. This stuff should be tested, cataloged, and archived. And they will not do that. Cases, if you look at it, Texas has full disclosure, Oklahoma has full disclosure, North Dakota, West Virginia, Arkansas. They can't even get it out of a subcommittee in Ohio.
Full disclosure, I think, is the issue.
Full disclosure, that's what we want.
How many people are aware here that the permit was applied for in October of last year?
Yes,
and it was approved in April of this year.
Mr. Spohn, that's what I wanted to ask.
We're not blaming you, Mr. Spohn.
This is a question I wanted to ask you.
There's an element of subversion here.
Based on your research so far, and you are newly elected and have only been on the job for a few weeks, and you have done an outstanding job of disseminating information that previously was with another administration and officials. Based on what we know, that number 1A, the permits were applied for in October of 2010. They were issued April of 2011.
Copy of the permit.
At some point, there was a requirement to inform the citizens of Mansfield so that they would be able to have a public meeting and ask questions and raise their concerns. Apparently, that's never happened because none of us have ever known about it. Now, it may be, and we've heard that possibly they might have adhered to the letter of the law by placing some random small classified ad in our local newspaper, which none of us, of course, have seen. So what recourse do you think we would have to say we were not informed properly?
Well, I think that the legislature should pass laws that say that in order for government to function fairly and to fulfill the due process requirements of all concerned, that when you have a regulation or a statute that says that a company that may affect our water source can simply provide a notice and it doesn't describe the minimum requirements of that notice, unless they change that law, I think that notice should be a full-page ad.
Well, certainly our local media could have covered it.
Well, you have a company from Texas that wants to put a small ad in. Their hope is not too many people see it. And then they have the audacity to just say there were no comments from the public. Well, the public could not comment because they were not informed what was occurring and they were not given information.
Mr. Mayor, Bill
So
Baker.
due process requires,
Would you like to
in
speak
all
on this issue?
aspects, of our procedures in government, in our courts, and usually in our legislative processes. It requires notice of something and an opportunity to be heard, and then the opportunity to respond. In my opinion, to allow a company to put in a 1 inch by 1 inch notice fails to meet the minimum standard for what anyone can say was a tenet of fairness. And you may find this kind of interesting, but when the Supreme Court of the United States over the years tried to evaluate what is the meaning of due process, they thought to themselves, and they gave a great deal of thought, what is the meaning of due process? That's in our Constitution. And it came down to something simple, they said. It means fairness. And then they evolved and says, well, how do we ensure fairness? They said, give them notice of the charge and an opportunity to respond. That's what we did not have.
Clearly, the city was put on notice, and there are city officials that had previous knowledge and knew that this notice had been given and knew that this process was in the works, correct?
Well, I don't know who for sure knew what.
Right, I'm just saying clearly somebody had to.
Yes.
Well, that's what we need to find out, who did not uphold. It could be considered malfeasance of their office not to publicly inform the citizens of Mansfield.
I can only say, all that I can say is I don't know who knew what, when, why, when, or how. I can say
somebody did.
I can say this.
Somebody did.
Our good mayor did not have any knowledge of
Both
this.
of you guys are, yes, new, but
And
somebody
he's a Republican,
did.
and I did not, and I'm a Democrat. Now that we've been elected, we work together to protect and serve each of you. We did not know.
Somebody did, and that was our only opportunity as a city. That was our only opportunity to come together in a public forum, ask questions of the ODNR, and voice our concerns, and that was the time. It's long past. We do not have that.
Thanks to the News Journal, we all know about it, because if
That's
they
true.
had not published that first article, we would all still be in the dark.
They'd be built it. They'd have it built. We'd be driving by, and what the heck's that, you know?
Just
That's
like our
not the way
landfills being
government
filled
should
from New
work.
York. You know, we don't know about that either, so.
Now, I
That's what
visited
I'm
the
saying.
site.
There are city officials that knew about this.
There's no construction
and
ongoing,
clearly did
but
not
there's
do
also
their-
land available. They're going to put in 2 wells. They have a permit for 1. There's land available out there. It's already marked out for 2.
They're looking at
I've talked to a
upwards
lot
of
of
a billion
government
gallons
officials
per
here.
year.
I've not met one city official that knew anything about this, and I've talked to dozens.
Well, there are some that did.
I have
I
not
can
met
promise you.
any. None of these.
Well,
none
I
of these
think the
officials.
biggest thing isn't, the biggest thing is what do we do now? How do we move forward?
That's what
We have a petition
True,
asking for
it
better
is true,
regulation.
But do we have any recourse because we weren't served notice properly?
The
Because
city
we
could sue the
weren't.
ODNR for the local being
That's
over
what I'm trying
state,
to find. What
you know.
recourse do we have against the ODNR for not allowing us that
Has anybody
public
even
forum?
seen the ad?
Well, let me,
Anybody
can
seen
I
the
ask
ad
you
yet?
this? Can I ask you this,
Has anybody seen
Mr.
it
Spohn?
in the paper?
You're the current city law director. If this was just happening now, how would the city be put on notice, and would you have to know about it?
Well, I think if it would have come to my attention,
I'm asking you, if this was happening now, and they were just starting, how would this notice to the city, how would the city be put on notice? Would it be contacting the mayor's office? Would it be in a city
Well,
council
it's-
meeting? Would it be, how would you know that they were going to publish this little classified ad? Let's put it that way. Would you know?
I don't think the statute or the regulations designate how a city would be put on notice. I think it simply says it would be published in a newspaper. And there are no specifics as to
And
what
we know
type of
for sure
notice.
that happened, correct? I mean, because that's
Yes.
what they've said.
Yes, I
But we
do.
know for a fact that
I
that's
do.
true. Do you know what date that was published?
That was in March of, I believe it was in, let's see, February or March of 2011, I believe. Now, you have other areas of the law which require notices to be in bold print. And the statutes give the specific language. It's not done here. So, and I'm not one that believes in conspiracy theories. And I've always said extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So I don't necessarily believe there's a conspiracy. What I believe more objectively is that there's a company that wanted to do this business and make money off of it as quietly as possible. And it slipped by everybody.
Can't find any information about that company.
Because nobody
None.
knew very much about it. If you see a note that says we're going to apply for 2 drilling,
Probably a shell for Chesapeake or something.
They are.
You know,
The fellow involved is involved in about 12 to 15 LLC corporations.
Just for instance,
Yes.
just like
Thank you.
No disclosure. The state of Ohio could require that. They say, oh, our hands are tied. We can't stop Pennsylvania from shipping this stuff over here. That's true. That makes Ohio unique in that we're taking all of Pennsylvania's fracking. Now, they could step up, the state could step up and say, okay, we can't stop you, but we want full disclosure. They can't even get it out of a subcommittee. Casey is running interference for these people. I mean, even if you look at Pennsylvania, in Pennsylvania, local zoning laws hold the highest precedent, all right? It's bottom up in Pennsylvania. In Ohio, it's down bottom. It's a pattern of intimidation and...
well, but I would just say this. There's always truth, and to some extent, in many different perspectives. But I would say that you probably have more zoning laws, more regulations dealing with mining there, because historically West Virginia and Pennsylvania
That might be true.
and mining communities,
They've had experience.
except for eastern Ohio, where I was originally from, very familiar with mining. Generally, the state of Ohio has been rural, and it hasn't involved deep mining. So for that reason, historically, there's a precedent. But the bottom line is, we now live in a modern world. We believe the state legislature, I believe the answer is with the state legislature. And we have to find out who are in those committees, why they can get them out of committee. Activism really works. It really does.
It does, except for we're so behind the 8 ball because this has
Right
been
now.
in place for over a year in our city.
Right. But we're going to try.
So we have to find out what we can do to what recourse we have.
What are you as a law director or as the mayor prepared to do on your level, at least, because obviously you were expressing your concern about it, whether that's permits or
Right.
whether
What we're trying to do is get the information first. Let me give you an example. There is one case that talks about drilling and fracking, or I forget if it was drilling or fracking. So the issue was, does a private citizen have the right to be able to bring a lawsuit to stop a company from conducting that type of business? And in that lawsuit, they said because you have to plead certain theories of recovery to invoke the jurisdiction of a court, where a court could issue an injunction to allege nuisance. Well, the definition of nuisance was a clear and imminent danger. The court in that case determined that speculating as to what could happen to water or other resources was not a clear and imminent danger. Therefore, it does not constitute a nuisance. Therefore, it's not actionable. Secondly, they held that because the Ohio Department of Natural Wildlife Resources has exclusive jurisdiction, the private citizen had no cause of action.
That is just wrong.
So it means that right now there is no cause of action. However, that case did not say a city didn't have standing to invoke the judicial branch to try to protect the public.
Can we get an injunction to stay this?
Unless we have data from experts that says we have a clear and present danger, tantamount to
Not gonna happen.
a nuisance.
It's also new that
Well,
there is
I
no
don't-
data.
That's not
There's enough data. It's being overlooked.
Mr. Law Director, I guess you're sensing frustration that we haven't had a voice in this, and I think that's what we would like to do. And there are a number of, and you talked about information finding, and I think that's what I would like to see as well. There are just numerous questions to be asked. Number one is, they talk about pumping capacity, but to what limit? How much are they going to put down there? I would like to know if they're going to track plumes. That water will move underground. That is a fact. And I would like to know how much it moves as well. And we've talked about fracking causing seismic problems as well, and fracturing and that impermeable rock layer. They're going deep enough to go below the aquifer, I hope. I suspect 9,000 feet is there. So I do believe that. But if cracking occurs in that impermeable layer, there will be seepage upward into our aquifer, and those underground aquifers are linked to our drinking water in the Clear Fork Reservoir and in these wells that many of us have. So I think the thing that troubles me is that the amount of fracking waste that's being produced is exceeding the cleanup. So there are transportable cleanup facilities that track these fracking facilities, and they can't keep up with the waste, and that's what's probably coming our way. What the problem is that they don't have to disclose under the Halliburton loophole what chemicals are in those fracking waters. Because of that, you can't really clean it up. And so what's coming our way is probably chemicals like chromium-6, cadmium, arsenic, lead. Those things are in those waters, and there are just too many. I would like an open forum to ask questions, or at least to read, to just like you. I want more information to be able to ask the right questions. And one last thing, as I would like to know if there's some kind of concrete seal around those wells that they're
Supposedly
drilling.
there is.
Yes,
Supposedly.
because that's a key. And
all
so
set
that's
out in
where
the
most of
permit.
the leakage would occur.
Right, that's
So
mentioning about not knowing about what chemicals are in the waste. I suppose there was some argument that they won't disclose it because it's a trade secret of some kind.
that's right.
On the other hand,
proprietary.
for example, if you were a doctor of geological mining involving the specialty or subspecialty of fracking in this kind of drilling, and then you could say we have a study that shows statistically what could happen, then a court will hear you. So the point is, the reason we're seeking information, as you are, is to find out what is the reasonable risk, if any. And secondly, we need experts to tell us what we should be concerned about. And by collecting information, by having the right experts, maybe an expert of the people and an expert the government can try to find, so each of them can corroborate each other, then a court may listen. I doubt very seriously that if we could prove a clear and imminent danger, I doubt very seriously that a court would not stop that action until it ensured, and it would have the power to do it, to ensure the proper procedures, irrespective of what the jurisdictional statutes are. The reality is we can't speculate, we can't worry, we have to get information, get the right experts, and find out where we're at. The other side of it is, maybe there's little or no danger. I'm just saying, we have to be open-minded. And if so, then it's just
We
a
have to
new
know that
industry.
first.
We have to know
Yeah.
that.
I looked up the
You know
company.
that
Could you
first.
explain it real quick? They were an LLC. Can you explain to me or our friends here what an LLC, as far as their legal, if they screw up our
Try to
water?
find Mr. Mobley. Try. Go
what-
ahead.
Well, it just limits the liability of
that's
each
what I
member.
figured.
And
Yeah, he's
which,
involved. He's
This
involved.
gentleman has over a dozen LLC companies, all
over-
involved
all
with this type of
all different
activity.
names,
So
all
an
different
LLC,
places.
if they screw up our water,
Stephen
they're
Mobley.
simply bonded.
Stephen Mobley,
It's just
yes.
they're bonded for
Austin,
$3 million,
Texas.
and then the state does not have any obligation to, they're forcing it down our throats, but the state's not going to fix it for us. This guy beyond $3 million is not going to fix it. Is that how this works?
Mhm.
Okay,
well, that's a question that I had. Is
there an
insurance
LLC?
required, bonding required, things like that?
And when something goes wrong out there, or they spill it, or something goes wrong, then it's going to be the city's coffers who are going to need to be used to clean it up, to
Well,
fix
we-
it, to protect the
We go straight to
citizens,
the feds. I can tell you that.
the fire departments, the police departments, and everything
Do you want
else.
to say something?
Do you think there's any city ordinances that the city can enact to try and protect us?
We just have to look into it, and I think that's what we're trying to do. And we're going to have to get some information. And like Director Spohn said, that we're going to try to bring in professionals that are very knowledgeable in it, and that we can sit down with the general public and have a forum.
Well,
And-
what if, just I'm just saying, what if we do all that, and because we already know, and it's already been stated, that the ODNR has all jurisdiction, and we can't stop them, these permits have been issued. If we do all that, and they say, so what, we're going ahead, we have their permit, then what do we do then? Then what?
Well, that
Down
okay. What?
down the road.
That's
Yeah,
down the road.
I know, I'm
But-
just saying, I mean,
But
that's it.
actually, that would be more of a legal ramifications that we would have to move forward with. And I'm not a lawyer, and Attorney Spohn is, but at that point in time, then we can move in that direction. But I'm hoping, and I know that there's something that Attorney Spohn and Director Spohn has been working on and looking at, but right now, you know, I mean, we can sit here all day long and debate this.
I'll get back to you later, but I have been in touch with the Community Environmental Defense Fund, and they are willing to take a look at this situation and assist us in any way as citizens and/or through the law director's office to point out what kind of ordinances have been passed, rights-based ordinances passed in other municipalities and cities and townships across the country to fight this. So if you all would be interested in following up with that, otherwise at least our group will be.
Mr. Mayor, I'm a member of the Society for Freshwater Science, and we're an international organization, and we've got about 1,700 members. We meet in Louisville for our annual meeting this May, and we have a special session just on fracking and contamination of fresh waters. If you need experts on fracking effects on fresh waters, I'm happy to provide names.
Could you please? That'd be great.
And on experts that would have knowledge of the impact of these injection wells involving the waste.
Well, I want to point out too, we need to be careful. I know you're reaching out, and in my opinion, I think you're the one group that I've talked to that actually makes me feel like you're hearing us and have our interests at heart. But I am concerned as far as reaching out, like to Ohio State. There's some stuff I'm reading that they get grants, and so I'm not sure that, I'm not saying they're corrupted. Or
I'm from Ohio State.
I don't know that. I'm just saying we need to, on our behalf, will you please be very careful who you choose. I don't trust the ODNR. If you're looking for them for unbiased information, that's a big mistake in my opinion. I don't know about Ohio State.
I would say not only experts, you know, you could bring in thousands of people that lives have been touched by that fracking fluid. And is a homeowner not just as good as an expert if they're living it?
Well, you know, even people who's from these injection wells have been impacted. It's,
well, we're going to do our
people
best.
in Wyoming, the EPA's one of the problems is each day in the past week, new things have come out, new information, new problems are being discovered, new things are happening, and new investigations are being. So we cannot possibly be on top of all of it at the same time because it's going to continue. That's why we need to find a way to stop this until everybody take a step back, take a deep breath, and let's get the information first. So I feel we need to find a way to stop it first, stop Mr. Mobley from doing anything, and then all the rest of this, and then find out if it's okay. We're putting the cart before the horse here, saying,
if I may briefly, good point. These gentlemen do have work to do. I appreciate the fact that we could debate this all day. Are you willing to include the community in all the disclosure that you're finding out? Well, have some type of advocacy group that can attend these meetings that you're holding?
I know we would like to have a meeting. The format hasn't been determined yet, but we know that...
We'd be happy to work with you on that, too.
Well, the most important people at that meeting, aside from the experts, are the people. And so...
Thank you.
That's the purpose of it. And so we're definitely going to make sure that we want a public meeting where the hard questions can be asked publicly. But we need a format so we don't have chaos, so we have an organized meeting. And
please invite the EPA, the Ohio EPA, too.
Well, I can tell you in my private practice over the years, involving many different kinds of cases, and including with the federal government, that I have confidence, generally speaking, in our government officials. But that confidence also is not naive. There's a lot of politics played at the state and federal levels. But I do believe that we can get the right experts that will tell us the right information, and then we decide to do what we will with it.
Thank you so much for your information, for both of your hard work. Thank you very much.
Mr. Law Director, thank you very much.
We appreciate it very much.
This is the way
Mr. Spohn. Thank you, sir.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Thanks for giving us the time today.
got the jacket in this room and also a camera case holder.
Really, you think I should? Yeah, well, I did that one. It wasn't successful.